Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Jennifer Wilson, and I'm here with my good friend Amy Vetter. And we are here to process leadership issues facing the accounting profession and facing us. Sometimes it's individual, personal, and sometimes it's kind of profession wide. So today, Amy and I thought we would talk about change management and some of the challenges related to it, but in the context of what's happening, perhaps in the context of what's happening with AI or not happening yet in some respects, and maybe a little bit offshoring, outsourcing, this blend and balance, organizations trying to figure out how to run more efficiently, how to leverage cost appropriately using these, and just recognizing that maybe it's not happening as fast as we sort of expected it to. And why is that? Is it that the technology is not there yet? Is it that we're running into too much resistance? So Amy and I thought we would play with that topic a little bit. We welcome you to comment as we go. And Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of start from where you would like to in that subject.
Sure. So I think there's so many new things coming at us in this profession. And one of the things with AI of why it's been such a disruptor in accounting is that we have a perfect storm of repeatable information, of structured information, and that makes programmers really happy. So when they're trying to, up level and see what they can do to really, change the way all of this works for small business owners and individuals and so forth, obviously the accounting side gets the benefit if we are staying up to date on what is happening out there. And one of the things is that anymore as an accountant, you really have to be a technologist. Doesn't mean you have to be a programmer, but you do have to understand technology and how it works and what the latest features are, even in the applications that you are using. A lot of times you are using AI without even realizing you're using AI. However, there isn't necessarily a point person in the organization that is training everybody on it, making sure there's the best use of it and so forth. So, I think a lot of times this is looked at, it's such a big initiative in the organization of what's new, instead of looking at in our current tool set, what do we already have that either we're not using or taking advantage of, not trained on, and that if we fully utilize those tools that are in the applications we're already paying for, then what are our gaps? Instead of assuming we have gaps before we've done a really clear assessment of what's sitting in the organization. Because I think, one of the things Jen and I were talking about that we see a lot is this friction between business transformation coming into a department and saying, this is, how we're going to help. And the department saying, we're good.
Yes.
And so then we're like, have this combustion of not great progress, might be like minor progress in the process. But also there is an education process that needs to happen for anyone coming into someone's current work of what currently exists and what are all the features we're utilizing and not utilizing before we start recommending new. And I think this is a really important step that is a hard step to take because it takes time, it takes process, it takes documentation, and it also takes ownership of these different applications in an organization so that someone is keeping up to date with any new feature coming out, how to fully take advantage of it, and how to operationalize it.
There's a lot there, man. You just threw like a huge frame down. So listen, I I think where you are is so amazing. I'm going to take it from where you are and go up one level real quick to just say organizationally, one of the things we run into all the time is this thing like IT is going to tell us all the stuff we should be doing that will innovate our service lines or service delivery or our systems. And we tell leaders all the time, hey, wait a minute. IT is like corporate infrastructure, corporate security and privacy, corporate integration, and yes, corporate innovation, but not like every software in every service line that's being used and a feature function knowledge and a what the latest version will get us and integrations to those things and output from it. They're not going to be expert on it unless you're going to invest a lot of money in headcount in IT. And then you can have business analysts who are dedicated to a service line that learn all the apps and can do this for you. Otherwise, you have to assign ownership of your technologies in use in your service lines and your operational area as well. We have to, Amy used the word ownership, and I'm going to double underscore it, bold it, and make it like 44-point type to say who owns each of these applications. And they're reading the emails from the vendors, and they're paying attention to releases, and they're figuring out how much of the functionality are we using, which pieces have we consciously chosen not to use, and why, all that you just talked about. And we have people create a visualization of all their tax technologies and then the name of each person who's following those technologies. We want one name in each box. And by the way, just because I'm the name today, as I grow up in my role and I, move into senior manager or principal or partner, I don't keep that technology role necessarily for that product I was expert at. I teach someone else. I evolve, so there's a living waters to that. But that's, an organizational development idea that people don't understand. So they're like, we don't know who's got the ball here. Nobody's paying attention to, the technologies and the evolution and what the next step is and all that. And I agree 100%. Instead, then what happens, Amy, is somebody hears like Blue Jay, or something, they hear like, oh, and they're like, well, we should get that then, and all of a sudden we go down some path because somebody heard something or heard about something, and they suddenly think we have to have it. And then there's resistance internally, and the resistance is manyfold. But one of the core pieces of resistance is, wait a minute, we probably already have 2 or 3 of these similar, applications available, research applications available to us that do this kind of AI-based research, and we're not using them yet. And so has anybody done a comparison? And do we really need to make an investment in yet another one? And so anyway, I love that. I love this idea that who owns it? I think that's where we start. And the lack of clarity of that has got a lot of our innovation stalled, in my opinion.
Yeah. And creating partnerships in the organization on what to do. So I think it's really important, like you said, have the accountability, but someone that is the subject matter expert in that area, be able to determine what is the biggest gap for that department, and then utilize your innovation folks and people in your organization to help you to solve that, to get better buy-in versus a push down into a department that's basically saying this is just creating more work for us. It's not solving our biggest need. And there's always going to be a push and a pull, like where from an organization standpoint, an organization feels they have to be versus where the people that are working. But I think it's really important. I was talking to some innovation people this week, and I was telling them about like a long time ago, and I don't know if Intuit still calls it this, but when I worked at Intuit, they would call it going into the wild, meaning that they would send their programmers out to an accounting office and just watch them work. So, and that was considered the wild. But
only in accounting, in accounting would that be the wild, by the way.
So, but yeah, I always thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But I think the premise and the concept of it is so important
Yeah.
that before proposing anything, you have watched people work, you've done the research and seen where there's duplication of work or where you can actually help them in their work so that they don't feel put upon, that you can create some easy wins to build that relationship and make sure that it's successful. And I think too often we're so concerned on like moving and getting things like pushed into an organization that we're not actually developing the right relationship to make sure it's solid and to make sure that we actually have success metrics agreed upon by both parties, that this is going to solve a problem and this is the success metric that it would need to hit over time so that I can see the result of the work.
Yeah. Well, and I love all of that too. And there was a lot of conversation at a recent consultants meeting I was at about this idea that, are the software vendors really like talking to users? Are they really getting out there to see how it's being used? And certainly as change agents inside an organization, we have to be sure that we're paying attention to the different use cases and determining what the best ones are and acknowledging that they don't work in certain places. And anytime you're a change manager, you say, well, here's the benefits and here's what will be different to the positive, but there are some negatives and here they are. And a good change agent always addresses the negatives, acknowledges them, maybe doesn't solve them. They may not be solvable right now, but just builds trust by telling the truth about the good and the bad, the pros and the cons or whatever. And on this whole idea of getting buy-in or getting use or getting adoption, it really is interesting that there isn't a lot of energy spent to sort of strategizing how will we get this thing rolled out. In a lot of firms, the way we begin to use stuff is somebody just decides they're going to do it, or a few people just start doing it. And that's fine. That's kind of the bootstrap sort of way of getting change done, but it does have some risk. And on the AI side, we really just need to acknowledge that there could be some very significant external confidentiality and privacy risks that need to be managed or mitigated. Client data, one of the things that we've been learning an awful lot about as we've been testing AI engines for recap writing is data, privacy of the data, and whether or not some of these license agreements for the primary licensor of the software and all their sub-licensees, the technology they're based on, what they're going to do with any data collected. Mm-hmm. And we should be paying really close attention to these license agreements because some of them are enabling, and I know most of us just click through the license agreement, right? So many people aren't reading it, but many of these software applications, and they're not necessarily just AI apps, all the apps, accounting apps, they're getting permission to sell the data. They're not just collecting the data, they might be selling it for profit or for benefit to a third party who wants that data, especially financial data. And so we, like letting bootstrapping happen where people just say, well, I'm going to start using this thing. And I think I could, put a bunch of client information in here and get some super cool insights, well, we better check first on security and privacy. And that's where the interface to IT exists. There needs to be some caution perhaps with some of these, with all the applications on that. And a lot of firms still don't have written policy on AI tools, especially. And I'm not trying to, I'm for max use, I'm for max advantage, but I also don't want us to accidentally let the fox into the hen house on our client data. And so while ownership should reside in the service lines with individuals, there should be some sort of concerted effort to integrate so we're safe, we're private, and we're also not all doing a bunch of different things at once. That can be overwhelming. to others if they're forced to sort of work with you and with you and with you, and you're all doing different things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I also, just through this process, I think it's also an important thing to be looking at when to slow down to speed up. When we talk about overwhelm that's happening in cultures, this is part of it. Like, it's not just the workload, it's about all the change that's happening at the same time. And we are definitely change agents as people, and are proponents of that. But there's also the measurement of how much can someone handle as far as current workload and the changes that are required in their job. And making sure that if this is a big initiative of your organization to, push through change in technology and workflow processes and so forth, that you are scoping out how that's going to happen in their metric of what they're being evaluated on and so forth. So is it being added already onto a very big workload, or are they properly balanced as far as their expectations and their metrics for work that they're doing on innovation and change versus the actual day-to-day client work and responsibility? And I think it's really important that this get delineated and rewarded, because at the end of the day, if you're able to free up capacity, however you decide to do it, so it can be, through technology, it can be through offshoring capabilities, it could be through recruiting efforts, and like ground recruiting, and, everybody out, having a metric on that as well. There is an overall ROI for the organization to be able to do that. And that should be set as part of the strategy, which is also part of everyone's goals besides billable time. And, if you really want to improve the future, you've got to think about how do you work with your current capacity to be able to do that. And even if you're hiring people in from the outside, or you've got a team internally that does these things, you are going to need subject matter experts in order to really bring it across the line, not only making sure that it really does help that team, but also that they can sell it internally to their own team and help to operationalize it. So this time really needs to be delineated and looked at just as important as a client, because it really does affect the total success of the organization.
Yeah. And I was just going to say that, there's so much there. Like, we need a whole session on measurement, at some point. We've probably done it before in our 5 years of streaming this, but, that whole idea of slow down to speed up, sometimes like invest, that non-billable time, innovation time, it isn't usually able to be put to a charge code, and it's invaluable. It's absolutely, if done well, immeasurable and valuable, and so I love what you just said, because I'm hearing quite a bit this calendar year so far of firms almost reversing on that, really pounding the drum on billable time and total hours worked and get to work. And, and it's insulting to say, if you're not chargeable, you're not working. That's an insult, and it flies in the face of everything we know about what it takes to run a successful firm. Got to invest in people, got to invest in innovation, got to invest in research, got to invest in trials. And people should be rewarded for that, not penalized through old measures. But I know in a lot of firms, it's the people that end up doing it inside firms that overmeasure time, overmeasure charge time and time overall. They do it because they know there's a payoff coming, not because they're rewarded, but they can't bear to work without that innovation or these new efficiencies that are available. So they do it anyway. But that's not the, those people also often leave that organization and go to someplace else that values it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important to just look at it that if you want it to happen, someone needs to be able to have that time scoped in their day to be completely present to work on it, to not be stressed that they're working on it, and to realize that it's just as important of an initiative of everything else that you're doing.
I'll say more important in some respects because it can, it can really enhance the quality of the work we're doing for others and improve efficiency and just make us so much smarter.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love this, Amy, and there are a lot of barriers there to change, but also a lot of opportunities for firms. And defining ownership for sure is one of them. And then valuing it, measuring it, reporting on it, talking about it, keeping it visible. Innovation's important. Change management's important. We all have to be really growing our skill set there. So I love hanging out with you. You always force me to innovate and change and think differently, Amy. So thank you for that. And I think we're off the next 2 weeks. We'll be back sometime in March. I think, I don't know what that date is, 14 maybe, right before the deadline. Those of you who might be tax related, you'll have to catch us on the record that day maybe. But everybody else, we hope to see you live. And we appreciate all of our followers and love your feedback. So be sure to share it with us. Thanks, everybody, for being here today.
Have a great weekend.